Okay, so let's talk about my favorite topic, user adoption in general. And I want to kind of also look a bit into the context of Power Platform, but maybe not, let's say, in a way of how to organize user adoption on a Power Platform, but maybe more in the end where you can find resources around that. So I want to actually look at it from a holistic view, why user adoption is so important, what are challenges and so on. And this kind of session is condensed in this 25, 30 minutes from the whole experience I have in this topic for about 15 years or something like that. So let's get started then. Okay. So quickly about myself. My name is Jussi. Probably most of you know me. I'm together with Terho and Antti hosting this meetup. So thanks again for coming to those sessions once a month. Next to being MVP, I'm also ProSci certified change practitioner, which is kind of the preferred change management certification by Microsoft, and it really focuses on general change management. So it's very interesting. If you're interested in that topic, have a look. Also Microsoft certified adoption specialist, and also co-organizing Collab Days Helsinki and Zurich. And I hope now that with the changes in the current world situation, that we can finally go and have face-to-face meetings again. And as already mentioned, together with Terho and Antti, co-hosting this PowerUp meetup session. Good. Let's get started. So I want to start with this quote, and maybe you have heard it already, but it says that, what would you do? What would happen if you train your employees and they leave the company? But what is worse, what would happen if you don't train them and they stay? So this presentation, I hope that we could have a bit of a discussion or a dialogue. So whenever something comes to your mind about a quote or something I say, then please, by all means, unmute yourself and maybe share a bit your own view on things. But I really like this quote because it kind of boils down the quintessence of user adoption, is that why it is so important. Because if you don't really properly train your users, you will have much bigger problems at hand. So why is user adoption so hard? What makes it so challenging? And for years now, I have been fighting in the industry about raising the awareness of the whole user adoption topic. And finally, I can see a change in the mindset of customers, but also from Microsoft directly, that, okay, we need to address user adoption now properly. And it's just maybe in the last couple of years where this change has been really taking place. And we can see that in kind of introducing in Microsoft and the customer success manager roles, where they kind of really focus on user adoption alone and making actually the customer successful with their tools. And this is exactly what user adoption is about. It's about closing the gap, or making the gap from the time when you start introducing a new tool or a system as short as possible until the user is actually productive with it and has no kind of working interruption. But why is it so hard? What makes it so hard? Let's elaborate a little bit. So one thing, of course, people, they're just different. So you cannot go and run a PowerShell script on a person and then it just runs, right? It doesn't go. So information gets created at its receiver. So if I send a message to Terho, I believe that I brought my message across, but Terho could understand something totally different from that message. And that depends on what Terho, of course, knows. It also depends a bit on his emotional state. It depends on many things, right? And the problem is, people are different, and they are different every single day. And that is what makes this so hard, right? And you need to kind of keep that in mind when you start building or planning for user adoption measures. And it applies to everything. And of course, not only to PowerApps or solutions you are creating for your customers or for your partners. Then also, of course, how many times have I heard there is no time to learn, right? I'm too busy to learn. I have no time to do this. I have no time to do that. My days are cluttered. I'm busy. I need to deliver on certain times. So there's always this kind of excuse of time, and this is probably one of the biggest, let's say, excuses I have heard when it comes to user adoption. Another part as well that change projects, especially in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, when implementing Microsoft 365 services or also PowerApps, it's always a change project because it changes how the user is working on a fundamental base, especially when we look at old legacy system moving to the Microsoft cloud, when we think back on the time when we were migrating on-prem services or documents on file shares to Teams, how the whole way of working has changed. And mostly those projects, they are still run as IT projects, where IT is just here to kind of make sure that the service works. But on a IT point of view, they don't really address that, okay, what is really valuable or interesting for the user? In the end, the user doesn't care if it's Teams, if it's Skype, if it's SharePoint, if it's Power Platform. In the end, they don't really care. What the user is caring is that they are not hindered in doing their job and doing their job well and actually be able to get home on time. Also, that people don't really find the right information at the right time. So the learning aspect of a working day is disconnected from the working aspect of a working day, right? I'm doing work and something doesn't work. I get frustrated. What do? I take the phone in my hand, I call someone, or then I spend hours of trying to find a way how to go forward. So this is something to keep in mind, that this working and learning environment is very disconnected, and that's a big challenge for end users. Then also, it is hard to convey the why of a change. And this comes back to my statement in the beginning that people are different. So for instance, the why of me or the value of me for Teams might be different than for a frontline worker. So how do I make the message of the why compelling for everyone? And why the why is so important, this is something we will look at a bit later. But it's basically the core of user adoption, that I understand the value of that change, and I from myself kind of see that value and can actually act according to it. And then of course there's always, and that's why I put it in capitals, change resistance. Always. So a new thing comes in, the first reaction is always, no, we don't need to change, this has worked for a very long time. And change is always scary, right? And it's kind of interesting because the only constant thing in life is change. Or how Charles Darwin would say, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And when we look a bit at Microsoft 365 and the services, exactly this quote is very, very relevant, because change is happening all the time. We don't have these 3 years update cycles anymore. They are down to 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And it even happens to me that often that when I work with those systems and I know that there is some certain feature in a certain place, it's just at some point it's somewhere else, or the whole UI changes, and I don't get any warning beforehand. It just happens. So the whole way of how to adopt and how to work with those tools, the whole fear of change, we need to eradicate from the minds of our users. And we cannot just go and say, hey, yeah, don't be so difficult. Just do that. It's not rocket science, right? If you go and tell that to a user and they don't do that, they will feel stupid. And when a user feels stupid, you have lost the game of user adoption, because it's really, really hard to change that mindset back to a positive one. Because if a user feels stupid, user acceptance will go down down to its low point, and from there it's really, really hard to fix that. So never make your users feel stupid. So how can we tackle those challenges? I'm sure that those things what I have told is maybe is familiar to you, or you have seen it already, or experienced it yourself. So what can we do in order to kind of overcome this? And this is also a bit a kind of a consolidation of the experiences what I have done, and I would like to share that with you. So for me, user adoption is like marketing. It's like I want to sell something to someone, or I want to change their behavior, and marketing has perfectionized this thing. So why not address this problem in the same way? So I come a bit later on what marketing actually is, but in my point of view is that running it as a marketing campaign and all the time adapting and changing it according to feedback from users, from the market feedback, this is a very, very powerful way of addressing this. Then also divide your user adoption measures in different phases. So for instance, if you come out with a new service or a new tool, your message should be, or is hopefully, way different than, let's say, the tool is already, or the process is for 6 months in use already. So the users change. That means that your message and your content and your measures of user adoption should change on the way. So you cannot do the same thing, the same time, in the same way all the time and expect a different outcome. I think Albert Einstein said that if you try to solve a problem with the same measures and expect a different outcome, this is insanity. And to be honest, how user adoption has been addressed for a very long time was, in my point of view, a bit of insanity. Then run your campaigns like agile projects. Very, very important part. So you cannot just go and assume something, throw it over the fence, then let it run and then wait. So another favorite quote of mine, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. And this is exactly what happens a lot in user adoption projects, is that people assume and think, okay, the users, they will get it. They will understand these messages. They will understand those tools. Users, they don't. And they usually do something what you would never expect, right? So in that sense, you need to look at it as like an agile project. And agile projects are here to tackle complex projects, which can change all the time. And this comes back to my thing that people are different. So there is, in my point of view, no other way than running the user adoption project in an agile way, by meaning come up with a plan, execute it, put it out there, get measures, analyze those measures, and adapt accordingly. But we will come to that as well a bit later on again. Then also set the proper basis for adoption and define success metrics. So think about, have a question in your mind, when is user adoption successful and when has it failed? And how can I measure the success of adoption, right? Very, very important. Most of people, they just start running and then they think, okay, we have done adoption now. And then in the end, you look at usage data and no one is really like using the tools as they should. How could you, when you're not really defining it from the beginning and planning your adoption strategy according to the success metrics you have defined? And do that in the beginning of the project, and especially also together with the project sponsors. Also, another quote of mine, what I really like is that your opinion does not matter, only the opinion of the market matters. And as being like an entrepreneur on a startup, I have needed to learn that on a very hard way, but meaning that, okay, we created such a cool service, everyone should want that, and it should go like hot buns. But the problem is that if it doesn't go, then maybe you build something which the market doesn't really need or is not really aware of it. So maybe you need to change something in your service, or mostly it is so you need to change something in your story. And when we come to the story, we come back to the aspect of marketing. So please if you have questions or comments, please just shout in. But I'm just going through now through the slides. So user adoption as a marketing campaign. And what is marketing in essence? What is it? What is it really? There's this big buzzword about marketing, and everyone should do marketing. And the most successful companies, they had the best marketing. Let's look at Apple, for instance. Think different. So, such a simple catchphrase, but it's so good. It's perfect. But what is marketing? It's telling a story with the intent of a sale. And when it comes to adoption of your Power App you are creating, or tools you are rolling out, or a new process you want to do, there's a certain reason why this new Power App or this new solution is created. And how do I convey this message to my end users, that they understand that, okay, yeah, this makes sense to me. I can buy into that stories. And people is also, they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Okay, that's another very famous quote from Simon Sinek. And this is exactly the same with user adoption. If you can convey the why message to the user, you will not have proper adoption. And what usually is happening, it comes then down by force from the line, and you don't have really engaged users or even an engaged community around a certain service or a topic. Then, of course, very intertwined to marketing is sales. So once you get the story across, how do you get the people actually to use it? Okay, how do you excel into that story? So it's basically removing all obstacles to buy. So if it's like a new service you want to bring across, make that service as simple as possible to use or to access. Don't make them, let's say, go through a multi-factor authentication, I don't know, 10 times in order to use a service. Users will not do that, okay? Try to remove as much obstacles as possible. This is already brings back to the statement before, that when you have training materials or services, make them as easy accessible at that moment where the users need them, right? Then what is closing? Creating the urgency to buy now, okay? So by meaning that, find ways to kind of motivate your users to actually go now to look at the training. Use maybe a bot or use gamification elements to actually reward users who are really active and do something like that. If you can manage this, I think this is a very good blueprint of creating successful adoption measures for whatever you want to bring across. Then how to communicate that it sticks. Okay, we talked about telling a story with the intent of a sale. How should you craft that story? And this is also something I want to bring across, is that people, they, especially nowadays, when we have a lower attention span than a goldfish, okay? Attention span of a goldfish is about 9 seconds. Humans are shorter right now. So you need to give a certain hook. So it's a hook where you hook the user on that message. The user sees a message, it's hooked on. That's the typical thing we see on YouTube, the clickbait. Okay, clickbait has a reason why it's there, because it works. So it's the hook you have. And once you have hooked the user on your story, you tell the story. You tell them what this hook is all about. You tell exactly what it means and what it is. You are clear. You make a short communication. Bullet points work perfectly. And in the end, you have an offer. So when you design, let's say, a good website or a good landing page, you have a hook in the beginning. You tell what this all is about. And in the end, it's about come and buy here. And the same should be as well with your user adoption and the way how you want to make, let's say, your Power App used by users. Try to kind of package it in a way like that. And then in the end, once you have the hook story offer, then also shooting the message out just once will most likely not work. So the fortune in your success is in the follow-up, by showing the message over and over and over again. In a sales way, it is so said that a user or a person needs to see a message 7 times that it sticks in the brain. And especially nowadays, when we have messages bombarding us all the time. Okay, fourth is in the follow-up. A small anecdote as well. In another statistics, what I have seen is that they try to build a sales funnel, and they sent it out as a marketing, and the sales funnel generated $10,000 without follow-up. Once they started to add a follow-up mechanism, like a marketing automation tool, that same product, the same sales funnel, created $80,000. So you can see it's a huge difference. Then also what I mentioned, time is running out, but the user adoption journey is in different parts. So in the beginning of a journey, you have a different story than in the end. So in the beginning, you want to ignite curiosity with the user. So you make them discover your new tool the easiest way. You give them the top 5 benefits of it. Afterwards, the user is hooked on the thing. You tell the story in the onboarding, that what exactly you need to do with that, okay? And then in the end, in the productivity phase, you have to offer as well, because it's offering you the efficiency or the kind of the improvement, what you want to bring across with that new tool or service or Power App or whatever you're planning to do. And last but not least, you have the mastery. The mastery phase is then when you basically give users more than what they need in order to excel in that new tool or service or whatever you are releasing. The continuous user adoption cycle, this is something I also want to bring across, is that, as I said, when you have measures, what we discussed, you have your story right, you have the hook story offers, you have the different campaigns set up, and then you start releasing it to the users. You make a plan, you implement it, you put it out, you measure how it's received by the user, you analyze it, you analyze the data, and you see, okay, this message doesn't work, this message works great, so let's create more messages like that. You adopt it, and then you put it out there again. And it kind of continues all the time forward through all those 4 stages, right? So it's run really like a continuous deployment process, like Agile. You do the same with adoption, user adoption as well. What are the other success factors? I'm soon done with the slides. I'm still in the last 5 minutes. I want to show some resources where you can find more about adoption from Microsoft. And actually, the funny thing is you will see that they say a lot as well, what I say here. But also other success factors of user adoption is that from the beginning, try to get the management on board. So it's always easier to have them on board and also actually stand behind your user adoption or your adoption measures. Also initiate a champions program, especially on bigger things. If you just release a new expense app, maybe it's a bit too much. But if you, let's say, have a really big adoption project like a Teams change or something like that, then have a champions program there from people who are enthusiastic or early adopters or innovators who are really interested in sharing their knowledge and helping. And for me, this is kind of the fuel of the user adoption. So you have this cool car. Cool car is nice. You can sit there, you can look at it, but it's only usable when you can put gas in the tank and actually, or charge it with electric charge, actually to drive around with it. Then also release digestible learning content to users at the right time, at the right moment. I already said that. Then also don't try to say all at once. So I've seen it so many times that adoption measures are that, okay, we need to do everything in one month. Everything needs to get out, okay? And then it's done. It never works, especially if you learn something and you don't use it within 2 weeks. 80% of that what you have learned is forgotten. And it's not just because people are stupid, it's just how we are wired. So if you don't use it, something you have learned, you forget it really, really quickly. Then also have the user in the focus of your, whatever you build, whatever you do. Is it a new Power App? Is it something? Always keep the user in focus and not the process. The process is secondary. Of course, process is important, but whenever you design something, always keep the goggles of the user first. How will it actually make the life of the user easier? How will it create value? When it creates value and the user sees it, the adoption is happening automatically. So Maybe we remember back in the days when the Nokia phones were the most popular ones. They were just the easiest ones. They were just the easiest ones to use. Then also, a video tells more than 1,000 pages of manuals. Of course, videos are really great, and there's also a lot of measures out there, or a lot of content out there what you can just use. It doesn't mean that you need to go and produce your own videos all by yourself. And I want to end this presentation with this quote. This kind of the essence of successful user adoption. My point of view is facts instead of opinions. So facts meaning you go measure, you see what the market, the user wants, instead of having your own opinion, what might work and what not. Stories instead of features. So tell a story with the intent of a sale instead of going just, yeah, you can upload documents and you can manage documents in the meaning that, hey, you have your document at your fingertips all the time, wherever you need it, whenever you need it. It's a much different communication. Then emotions instead of processes. When you can trigger emotions in your communication, that's when it starts sticking with the end users. When people don't feel anything, when you tell them something, there is no engagement happening whatsoever. Good. Last but not least, I have still a couple minutes. I wanted to show the user adoption resources. Maybe you know about adoption.microsoft.com. Go check it out. This is extremely useful resources. Where is Teams client? Let's see. Okay, sharing my screen again. Here we are. A few more minutes. So here, adoption.microsoft.com/Power Platform. Here you can see a lot of resources around how you can make adoption work for your Power Platform initiatives and the tools you're building. So for instance, here is a workbook. This is a whole PowerPoint presentation, which has a lot of similar things in a much more detail. You have a much more detail than, of course, in this short time what I brought you across. But there you have like worksheets and so on, where you can fill in your stakeholders, exactly the value proposition of your tools and so on. So check this out. There's a lot of information around adoption of Power Platform tools. Then also Power Platform adoption best practices. You find here a link as well. So for instance, how to build a strategy and vision for your tools, how to do administration and governance for your Power Platform tools, nurture and educate. So how do you accelerate your adoption, and then how you enable support. And one of my favorite things, what you find here in the adoption.microsoft.com site, is the sample solution gallery. I don't know, you have seen it already. I think you can find it somewhere from here, somewhere below it. I can show it later how to get here. But there's a main link on adoption.microsoft.com, and here you can find sample solutions what community has created or Microsoft has created to kind of help your everyday life with Microsoft 365 products. So for instance, we have here around Teams, we have around SharePoint. I think there are also Power Automate samples and things like that. So maybe Terho, your Gantt chart could be something for this platform in here. But check it out. I think here is also a lot of cool things, and you as maybe as a creator can get inspiration how people have done it from here directly. So in my point of view, a really cool thing to look at.